I'm so excited to share this super easy chocolate lava cake recipe. This cake has a ganache filling on the inside, making it a bit more foolproof and safe to eat. First things first, let's make our ganache so that it'll have plenty of time to set in the fridge. This is the classic chocolate filling for molten lava cakes. Always use chocolate bars over chocolate chips if you can. Chocolate chips have added stabilizers, so they don't melt as nicely. Roughly chop up your chocolate bar so that it will melt more evenly. Heat up your heavy cream to a low simmer. Add the cream to your chocolate and a pinch of salt and let it sit for a few minutes to allow the heat from the cream to melt the chocolate. Then you can mix and you'll get this beautiful glossy ganache. Cover with plastic wrap, touching the wrap to the ganache, and refrigerate. If you're in a hurry, you can also throw it in the freezer. Honestly, this is probably the most time-consuming part of the whole recipe, waiting for the ganache to set. If you want to change it up from the traditional lava cakes, here are a couple of fun variations you can try. Add instant coffee and Kahlua to the same recipe we just used. Same method, but you just need to add the instant coffee to the cream and a splash of Kahlua at the end. Add as much or as little as you'd like. I love to balance chocolate desserts with fruit, so this raspberry filling is a great way to add a little contrast to the rich dessert. Start by cooking down some raspberries. Frozen raspberries are great to use when the fruit is not in season. Once the berries have broken down, add your chocolate. Keep the heat on medium-low so it doesn't burn. Do the same with all your fillings and refrigerate for at least 2 hours, or until set. Putting them in a shallow dish will help them set much faster and can help cut the time down. Again, throw it in the freezer if you're short on time. This is what it should look like once set. To make it easier to assemble, I scoop the ganache onto some parchment paper and gently flatten. Then place them into the freezer until needed. The raspberry doesn't set quite as firm, so you will need to do the scooping method, which I will show you later. Moving on to our main component, the chocolate cake. Use a bittersweet chocolate, which is at least 70% cocoa. You can use semi-sweet, but I do not recommend milk chocolate. You'll get a very sweet cake and the texture may not be the same. Again, we'll give the chocolate a coarse chop, add your butter and melt together. You can do this over a double broiler or microwave. If using the microwave, do it in 20-second increments and mix in between so the chocolate doesn't burn. Once melted, set aside to cool. While we wait for the chocolate to cool, butter and dust your ramekins with cocoa powder so that we'll be able to remove our cakes easily. If you don't have ramekins, you can also use a muffin pan. In a separate bowl, start beating your eggs and egg yolks and then stream in your sugar. Add vanilla and keep whipping until your mixture has turned into a pale yellow and grown in volume. Then add about half of your melted chocolate. Continue beating and then combine the rest of the chocolate by hand. Fold in your flour and salt. Now the batter does thicken as it sits, so the best way to fill your ramekins is by putting the batter into a piping bag or a Ziploc. It gives you more control and is also less messy. Start by filling your ramekins about a third of the way. Then insert your hardened ganache disc. You want to make sure your ganache doesn't reach the edge. Pipe more batter on top and around the edge to contain the ganache in the center. I usually fill my ramekins about halfway, giving it room to rise slightly. Now with the raspberry filling, we are going to do the same thing, but we are going to create a little well in the center. Then add a generous scoop of your filling, and careful not to let it ooze to the edge. Keep in mind the filling should be a little more firm than this. I removed mine from the fridge a little too early. You can also make this in advance and put it in your fridge until you are ready to bake. If you want, you can add a fresh raspberry to the center. And that's it. However you do it, the end goal is to encase the ganache inside the cake. Bake at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for about 11 to 13 minutes. It may take longer or a shorter amount of time depending on the size of your ramekins and how much you fill them. They are done once the edges have set, but the center is still just a little jiggly. When you touch the tops, the batter shouldn't be wet. Run a knife along the edges for easier release. Let it sit for a couple minutes before you invert it onto a plate. Serve while it's still warm and top with some fresh fruit or even a scoop of ice cream on top.